Welcome to my 2021 ACC College Football Season Preview, part of my series where I go through and I review each of the 10 FBS conferences, predict order finish, look at who's going to be playing in the conference championship game, at least championship games, at least what I'm predicting coming into the season, and then also look at the overall records for each of the teams in each of those conferences. So this is a new series that I'm doing every year by myself, at least for the last 3 or 4 years. I've gone through College Football Preview magazine, usually Athlon Sports, because I think they have a good format for at least the way they set up their magazine, easy to read and easy to juxtapose my picks against theirs. Even though I'm not a big fan of their analysis. Anyway, I've done that every single year by myself, and last 3 or 4 years, and at the end of the year I go back and I check my work, and every year I've been better than Athlon Sports Predictions, so I thought, hey, get it out there on YouTube so at least you have proof. But you're probably asking yourself, what does a Boise State guy have to say about the ACC? Well, I guess that's fair, but you know what? I've been a military brat, so I've moved around. I've lived about half my life on the East Coast, between Virginia, South Carolina, Alabama, and Florida, even though I know there's not any Alabama teams in the ACC, obviously. But, you know, I've lived my life on the East Coast. I've watched a lot of college football, including a lot of ACC games. I went to school in Virginia. I actually worked on the Fox TV crews during the Virginia football seasons for about 3 years there, so I went to a lot of UVA games. Weren't great when I was in college, but they're getting better now. And of course, Brian Finley going over to NC State, watched a lot of NC State games. And you know what, overall, every single football season, I get 2 computers set up and my phone and the television. I watch about 10 games at one time. I try to catch every single football game during the season. It's an obsession at this point, but I love it. So that's really kind of just an intro in there right now. I think I've got a pretty good perspective. And like I said, I've been better than Athlon Sports every year on these, and I'm hoping I'll be good this year. Now, this year is the hardest college football season to predict of any that I've ever looked at, and I'm not the only one saying it. You know, you can go in and read. There's lots of analysts talking about how difficult it is to predict this season, because last year was just such a weird fluke with the way the COVID season came in and wrecked things. You know, some teams only played 4 games, some teams played 12 games, some teams played no non-conference games like the Pac-12 and most of the Mountain West teams, or some teams played conference games like the American Athletic Conference and the ACC. So you have teams that it's impossible to compare them against each other because they're playing different teams that they normally wouldn't, or they're not playing those teams that so you're just looking at inter-conference. And how do you judge a team when they're just playing other teams in the conference? You can't tell how much better they are against other conferences. So I'm very proud of the ACC actually going out there, leading the way along with the Big Ten, and actually going out and doing something and playing some non-conference teams makes them a little easier to analyze. But like I said, hardest season to preview. Also, so many players back. From bottom level of the conference, top level conference, every team got tons of talent back. I mean, just starting off with Boston College, they got 18 players back, and that's just Boston College. I mean, when you start looking at other teams, they got even more than that in some cases. So it's an incredible number of players back. It's going to be a really weird year. I think a lot of talent across the board, a lot more evenness overall. So I expect to be wildly off on a few of these teams, but I'm hoping overall I'll be pretty consistent. So let's jump right into the video here. I'm going to try and keep these under 15 minutes. Like I said, I'm going to go through each of the teams, predict order finish, and I'm going to go through each of these individually based on how Athlon Sports lays them out, give you Athlon Sports season prediction against my season prediction, and then we'll see how it goes. So starting off with Boston College, Athlon Sports is predicting 7-5, 4-4 ACC. I'm predicting 6-6, 4-4 ACC. I do think that Athlon Sports has them, I think, beating Temple here in the non-conference. I think that Temple's going to get the win here. Not that Temple's been that great, but Boston College has had a pretty off-cut few years here. I mean, 6-5 last year and 6-7 in 2019. I think Temple's able to come in here motivated, get that win. Actually, they're going at Temple, Boston College is. So, I mean, that's even more motivation. You got a Power 5 team coming into your school. Like, Temple doesn't get a ton of opportunities like that, so I think they're going to be motivated to get that win. But I think that Boston College still has a pretty decent year overall. Does manage to get some 4 wins against some down teams in the ACC, such as Syracuse and Florida State, and pull off a couple surprising wins, such as against Louisville and also against Georgia Tech here, though that's not so much a surprising win. They're still kind of adapting after moving from the option to a normal offensive set. So I think it's going to be an interesting year for Boston College, but again, I think they're going to be middle of the pack ACC-wise. So let's move on to the next one here. So we got Clemson Tigers. No Trevor Lawrence this year. Lost their top running back as well, so it's going to be a really weird year for Clemson. I think they're still going to have an excellent year. Athlon Sports is predicting 13-0 overall, 8-0 ACC. So a great year for Clemson according to Athlon Sports. I think Clemson's still going to have a great year, especially when it comes to their conference schedule. They play one of the weakest conference schedules that they've ever played. The only really tough challenge on this entire, and I call it tough by comparison, is NC State. Really, after that, there is nobody on this roster that I think is going to even come close to challenging Clemson, even without Trevor Lawrence on the field. I mean, they don't play North Carolina, who's going to be great, I think, in the ACC this year. They don't play Virginia Tech. They don't play Virginia. I just think that this is going to be a really easy schedule for Clemson to breeze through. I am not as hyped up on, I'm going to butcher his name here, but DJ Ugalele. I am not as hyped up on him as everyone else seems to be, even some predictions that he might go out and win the Heisman. My wife's a Clemson fan, so we watch every single game, and I was not that impressed. I think that he played well, especially for a freshman, but I don't think that he's Heisman level, and I don't think that he's at all near the same level as Trevor Lawrence. It'll be interesting to see what he can come out here and do, especially, again, they're having to replace a number one running back and number one quarterback. For them, great quarterback and great running back, but they do return 15 players overall. That's actually just one of the lowest in the ACC, at least on offense. Coming back, do return 10 starters on defense. So that should be an exciting year. I think it's going to be interesting. So I'm going to be predicting 11-1, 8-0. I think they'll run the table in the ACC, but that first game against Georgia, especially with Georgia having JT Daniels, who's an experienced quarterback, and Georgia had a great year last year with only losses to Alabama and Florida. I don't think that Clemson, especially first game up with a new starter, and even if he starts some games with passes, his first season starting, going to have some of those first game jitters, even though he has some experience. I think Georgia definitely gets that win in that neutral site game there, Charlotte, North Carolina. I think that Clemson recovers well from that, goes on an undefeated streak afterwards, and wins the goes to the ACC championship game. All right, moving on to Florida State. 6-6 is what the Pulse. This is what Athlon Sports is predicting. 6-6, 4-4 overall. See, I'm looking at their record: 6-7 in 2019 and 3-6 last year. Now, obviously 3-6. That's with the COVID season. That's with a new head coach, Mike Norvell, who didn't get to install his vision really of the team with a lot of the preseason workouts and everything getting cut. So I understand that, but I don't think they're going to be doing it quite as well as Athlon Sports predicts. I think they're probably going to be going 4-8, 2-6 overall. I think this is still going to be a rebuilding year. Really, the first year that Mike Norvell is really getting to establish his vision. Last year was just kind of a practice for this year. This is really his first year here. But I just don't think Florida State is back up to the level of what they have been in the past, especially not in the past years when they were dominating in the conference or being at the top tier of the conference in the Jameis Winston years and that kind of time period. I still think it's going to be a while. I'm not super hyped up on Mike Norvell either. I think it was an interesting coaching hire there. I think that Florida State has a long way to go before they're back in the top. I'm not sure Mike Norvell is the coach to do it, but especially not this season. Predicting 4-8, 2-6 overall. Louisville Cardinals 7-5, 4-4 is what Athlon Sports is predicting. 4-7 last year and 8-5 the year before that. I think it's probably going to be another down year for Louisville. 4-8 and 3-5 is what I'm predicting there. I think they're going to drop a game to UCF. I think they're going to drop a game to Ole Miss, and I think they're going to drop a game here at the end of the season to Kentucky to wrap up the non-conference schedule. I do think they get a couple of good wins here. Boston College, Syracuse, and Duke. I think they can win those in the ACC. But overall, I think Louisville is just going to be having another tough year coming back. Scott Satterfield there, second. It's going to be his third year coming in. Is 12-12, so he's even tied up so far, especially with a pretty good showing his first year. But just coming back the way it is, and the schedule that they have is actually pretty tough. Playing Ole Miss, UCF, Virginia, NC State, Clemson, even Duke. These are teams that are going to challenge Louisville at where they are right now. Only returning 12 starters overall, offense and defense combined, and losing their number one running back. Not a combination for success, especially considering last year when they lost to teams such as Georgia Tech. I mean, that's really embarrassing ACC-wise. Losing to Georgia Tech, they did win against Syracuse, but they lost to Boston College as well. And Pittsburgh. So not a great season last year, of course, and I think it's probably going to be another rebuilding year for them this year. NC State Wolfpack. Now, this is a team that I've been following for a while now, and I've got a lot of friends, who are NC State fans. Looking at you, Zach Green out there, giving me a call out. A lot of friends who are NC State fans. I think you're going to see a much more exciting season. I think NC State is going to be a little bit of a surprise here. They were 4-8 in 2019 and 8-4 last year, so definitely they're moving in the right direction after losing their great quarterback Ryan Finley there. They are having to replace quarterbacks again. They're having to replace running backs again, though Rick Persons does return. I think that he's played really well. but they are having to at least replace their quarterback there. But I think Athlon Sports is predicting a pretty good year, 8-4, 4-4 ACC. I think it's going to be a little bit better than that. I think NC State's going to go 9-3, 5-3 ACC. I think that they can open up. They have a pretty weak non-conference schedule here, which is good for them to kind of get back in the saddle after having to deal with so much turnover. Including offensive coordinator wise, losing Ryan Dinwiddie like that. So USF, Mississippi State, and Furman, pretty good non-conference wins right there. Well, pretty easy non-conference wins. Should be able to knock it out of the park on that level. I think they do lose to Clemson. I think that'll be a interesting game, especially Clemson's hardest game, I think, of the season, at least for ACC schedules wise. And then I think they're going to do really well. I think they're going to drop a game to Miami. Just Miami, great team coming back. Just really hard to beat there. And North Carolina, but I think they're going to win every other ACC game on their schedule here, and I think it's going to be a pretty good year for NC State Wolfpack. All right, Syracuse Orange coming off one of their worst seasons last year, 1-10 and 5-7 before that. So it has been a pretty steep downward trajectory here for the Orange. Dino Barber coming into his 6th year as head coach here. I think it's going to be another tough year. I think they'll do better than their 1-10. Athlon Sports is predicting 4-8, 1-7 ACC. I'm predicting 3-9, 0-8 ACC. I do think they go. I don't think they win any ACC games this year. I think they can. I think they'll start off great though. I think they've got a really easy non-conference schedule to start off the bat. They play Ohio, Rutgers, and Albany. I think they can get a 3-0 start, but then it's going to be all downhill from there. I think they're going to drop the game to Liberty, and then just pretty much downward plummet from that point. Liberty, of course, a really good independent school this year. So Syracuse is going to be bottom of the conference again. Just not, don't have the tools, don't have, I think, the coaching staff, honestly, and I don't think they have the, definitely not the talent. Even though they returned 19 players, I just don't think they have the talent on this roster to get them where they need to be right now. All right, Wake Forest, the Demon Deacons. So Athlon Sports predicting 6-6, 3-5. I'm going to say a little bit better than that. I think they're going to go 7-5, 5-3. ACC, their last year were 4-8, but the year before that they were 8-5. And now you look at teams that had bad years, and you go, okay, was that a bad year because of COVID, or was that a bad year because the team's just on a downward trajectory? And when I say bad because of COVID, I think a lot of teams were impacted more severely than others just because of their play style, because of their coaching style, because of who the members on the team were impacted more severely by the lack of consistency in the scheduling with canceled games here and there. That really impacted some teams more. And then really the reduced practices really hurt a lot of teams out there. It really allowed bottom dweller teams to kind of have better seasons than they normally would, because the teams that were already bad, it kind of lowered the level on the bar so that they were able to compete at a better level. But it also made some of the teams that were middle of the pack have much tougher season than they should have been. I think Wake Forest was one of those teams. 8-5 last year. I think they're much better than their 4-5 record shows. I think that they're going to be middle of the pack ACC this year. I think they'll open up with a 3-game winning streak with easy wins against Old Dominion, Norfolk State, and Florida State. I think they'll drop a game to Virginia, but I think they'll get a win against Louisville and Syracuse. So I think they're going to open up on a nice 5-1. 5-1 stretch there. I think that's going to be pretty good for them. I think it's going to be tough sledding the rest of the way. I mean, they play Army, North Carolina State, NC State, Clemson. Should be able to get wins against Duke and Boston College, but the rest of those games I mentioned probably going to be losses. But tough end of the season slate for Wake Forest, but definitely things looking brighter down there for them and moving forward overall. I think they're going to be a much better team, much better than 4-5 record anyway. Okay, Duke Blue Devils. 4-8, 1-7 is what Athlon Sports is saying, and I concur. I think it's going to be exactly that, 4-8, 1-7. Just really kind of 2-9, rough year last year, and then 5-7 the year before that. So really kind of a downward trend overall for the Duke Blue Devils. I think that they might open up with a 2-0 start here with the games against Charlotte and North Carolina AT&T, but it's really going to be rough down the rest of the way. They have a pretty rough game against Northwestern there. They should be able to get a win against Kansas. No Les Miles there. It was really kind of the Mad Hatter giving them a chance to actually play. So I think if Les Miles was there, I think Kansas could potentially pull up an upset here. Upset for them anyway against Duke, but I don't think that's going to happen without him. So I think they can open up with 3-1 there, but then the rest of the way, maybe get a win against Georgia Tech, but probably losses the rest of the way there for Duke. All right, Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. I don't know why they went away from that option offense. It was really kind of the only thing right now because Georgia Tech really doesn't recruit at the same level as the rest of the ACC. They don't have the same facilities, and that option offense was really the only thing that was keeping them competitive because it was at the option offense. And you see the reason academy teams use it because teams that recruit players that aren't quite at the level, aren't quite necessarily at the same height or weight or speed or 5-star, 4-star type prospects. With that option offense, it doesn't matter so much because it's about the coaching, it's about the team overall. That's why teams like Air Force and Army and Navy, who in the past have had pretty stringent weight standards, can go out there and compete and be pretty, at the top, at least top in the group of 5 sometimes, can go out there and be really competitive teams with those option offense. And it was exciting to see Georgia Tech. They really had some flashes in the past there where with better teams than Air Force and Navy and Army are getting, better players than those teams are getting, playing the option offense at a high level. I really didn't understand them going away from that. I think that was really the only thing holding them in. Of course, after they've gone away from that option offense, we've really seen that hurt them. 3-9 in 2019 and 3-7 last year. I just don't think it's going to be a long time. I mean, without that option offense, they're basically just another Kansas or a Vanderbilt. They really just don't have the recruits to run the offense the way they want to, the way they're trying to run, regular spread style offense. It just doesn't work for them. So I think it's going to be another tough year. Athlon Sports is predicting a pretty good season for what I would consider good for Georgia Tech, 5-7, 3-5 ACC. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be another bad year, 3-9, 1-7. Maybe it'll be bad enough to convince him to go back to the option. I don't know. Again, really mind-boggling that decision to go away from it. And I think it's disappointing because it's fun to watch the option in the Power 5 because you don't see that very much. So it was kind of exciting. It kind of made Georgia Tech interesting to watch. Now they're just another bad lower-level Power 5 team with a normal offense. So, all right, Miami Hurricanes. Of course, Derek King, of course, signing that massive NIL deal. So great job for him there. Miami's gonna be one of the best teams in the ACC this year. The Miami's division here. Sorry, I had a total brain blank. 1 second. The Coastal Division, thank you. The Coastal Division is really tough this year. I mean, I think Miami, North Carolina, and we're going to look at these teams here in a second, but Miami, North Carolina, Virginia Tech at least are all really competitive, very competently run teams. Athlon Sports predicting 9-3, 6-2 ACC. I think it's going to be better than that. I think it's going to be 10-2, 7-1 ACC. I think they will open up with a loss against Alabama, just like everybody does to Alabama, but I think that they're going to do nice job here against Appalachian State and Michigan State. I think they can go out there and get that win against Michigan State after having a down year last year, and Miami having a much better quarterback than Michigan State in Derek King. And then I think they'll drop a game to North Carolina, but I think the rest of this schedule here is going to be smooth sailing for Miami down the stretch with a great year for Derek King here coming out before he goes pro. All right, North Carolina Tar Heels. North Carolina, I think, is the best team in the ACC this year. Mac Brown, legacy coach, historic NCAA coach, of course, at Texas, has really turned North Carolina in the right direction. They had 7-6 in 2019. 8-4 last year, and they were really close to a much better record. Only a 3-point loss to Florida State, only a 3-point loss to Virginia. They did have a 2-possession loss to Notre Dame, but that's not that bad. I mean, North Carolina was this close to an undefeated season last year and potentially winning the ACC. I mean, they were this close to it, and I think that they were very competitive in that Notre Dame game. So Mac Brown really has his team headed in the right direction. He is just a few inches, a few points off of having a dominant power level, top of the ACC level team here, and I think this is the year they do it. The Athlon seems to be agreeing that their Tar Heels are headed in that direction with a 10-3, 6-2 overall record is what they're predicting. I think it's going to be better than that. I think it's going to be 11-1, 7-1 ACC. I think that they're going to this non-conference schedule is pretty easy. Besides the Notre Dame game, so I think that they can blow those teams out. The Notre Dame game is a chance for revenge, is a chance to go back in there. I think that North Carolina is going to play much better. I think their quarterback, Sam Howell, is an excellent quarterback, one of the best in the ACC. Of course, last year completing almost over 3,500 yards last year and 30 touchdowns with only 7 interceptions. An incredible talent, definitely legitimate NFL level talent right there in Sam Howell. I'm excited to see what they can do. Now, the reason I'm saying 7-1 is I think that along the way here, North Carolina is going to drop one game. Now, Mac Brown has shown that tendency there, just like last season, losing those close games. I think that North Carolina has the potential to lose even 1 or 2 games. I'm only predicting 1, but lose a game that they shouldn't lose. And I think that game that they might lose, that they might just be overlooking, I'm going to say right now it's Virginia Tech at the beginning of the season. Those first games, those first opening football season games are really the most dangerous for these teams. Not necessarily set in their way, not necessarily established, not necessarily as prepared as they should be potentially. Don't have the game film to watch. I think that there's a chance there, Virginia Tech, to come in, even though they didn't have a great year last year. Virginia Tech, of course, going 5-6 last year. I think that Justin Fuente here. I think he's going to be motivated. I think that Virginia Tech is going to be underestimated by North Carolina, and I think there's a chance they come in here and upset the Tar Heels at home. If they don't do, at Virginia Tech. If that doesn't happen, I think the Tar Heels will lose at least one conference game here along the way. But I think this is going to be an outstanding year for the North Carolina Tar Heels overall, and I think that they'll avenge that Virginia Tech loss by going undefeated the rest of the way. And by the way, I'm not saying Virginia Tech's a better team than North Carolina. I absolutely believe North Carolina is the better team here. I just think that they're going to drop a game at some point and might as well start off at the beginning with Virginia Tech and get it out of the way. So, Pittsburgh Panthers here. Athlon Sports predicting 7-5, 4-4 overall. I think they're going to be going 6-6, 3-5 overall, coming off of a 6-5 campaign last year, and of course an 8-5 campaign in 2019 where they memorably went out and beat UCF. That was exciting. I love seeing that. It'll be interesting to see what can happen here. They do return a pretty decent quarterback with over 2,400 yards passing. He did throw 9 picks, that being Kenny Pickett. That's appropriate with the picks. He did throw 9 interceptions last year, so it'll be interesting to see if he can improve upon that. I think that Pittsburgh's going to have a fair season by their standards. I just think that they're going to lose a couple of these games. I mean, they play a pretty rough schedule here with games against. They play Clemson, Virginia Tech, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia. I mean, this is a really tough schedule down the stretch here. I think that they're able, and even a game at Tennessee, I think might end up being a win by Tennessee. They're coming in with their first-year head coach, getting a chance to prove that Tennessee can go out and get it done against the middle-of-the-pack ACC team. I just think that this is not going to be ACC Pittsburgh's year. They could go out there and prove me wrong, but I think they're probably going to be middle-of-the-pack, lower-end ACC team, just like last year and even the year before that. All right, Virginia Cavaliers. Now, 2019, they went 9-5, and last year they went 5-5 ACC. Bronco Mendenhall is an outstanding coach. He did a great job at BYU, and he's done a great job with Virginia. I think that he's better than a 5-5 record. Now, Athlon Sports is really, I think, underestimating Virginia here. They're thinking 6-6, 3-5 ACC. Now, I've watched Virginia play for a long time. Like I said, I went to those Virginia games, and I held the parabolic mic, it's the big circular one that keeps up the crowd noise. So I was right there on the field. I've seen a lot of bad Virginia football teams, and Virginia is not that same team that they used to be back in 2015 through 2017. The Bronco Mendenhall has really turned this team around, really made them a competitor in the ACC. Last year, I think, just with the way that it was with COVID and everything, it was really kind of a fluky season. Even despite that, I mean, they weren't that far off. They played Clemson decently well. I mean, they only lost 23-41, which is pretty good playing against a great team like Clemson. They only lost to NC State by 17 points, which, it's kind of a rough loss there, but it could have been worse. The loss to Wake Forest was bad, but they only lost to Miami by 5 points. So they did drop a few games there off the beginning, and I think that really just had to do with the way that, like I said, some teams, that loss of practice really hurt them, especially a team like Virginia, where Bronco Mendenhall has been trying to kind of establish his new vision there for the school. So I think that is probably what really hurt them there. And I think that they're going to be much better than, I think a lot of analysts aren't really taking into account the impact that COVID had, and I think that Athlon Sports is doing that here. And down the stretch, I mean, they were great. They won against North Carolina, who was excellent last year. Louisville, Abilene Christian is not that FCS school, and against Boston College. College. So they won 4 games in a row before dropping that final game to Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech just more motivated in that one, I think. So I think that last year was a fluke. I don't think that Virginia's going to be like that. I think they're going to come back in much stronger this season. So 6-6, 3-5 ACC. I'm predicting 9-3, 6-2. Yes, that's a big prediction, especially considering last year and what Athlon has out there. But I think they have the chance to come in and pull off a great season under Bronco Mendenhall. Really chance to come back and prove that they're better than that record last year. All right, Virginia Tech Hokies, and this is our last team to preview before I just kind of do a quick overview here of ending position and predictions for the NC State Championship game. I think you're going to be surprised by my predictions, so stick around to the end here. So Athlon Sports is predicting actually a pretty decent year, 8-5, 5-3 ACC. I'm going to agree on the 5-3 ACC, but I think they're actually going to be going 7-5. I think so. It looks like Athlon Sports is predicting a win against West Virginia. I'm going to predict a loss against West Virginia there, but I think that the rest of the way here, they're going to have a pretty good year. They're going to lose Notre Dame. I think that's probably pretty much apparent, pretty much coming. But I think they're going to be able to grab some wins here against Syracuse, Georgia Tech, Boston College, and Duke. But it is a tough schedule overall. I mean, they play Miami, they play North Carolina, they do play Notre Dame. So there's some chances here to pull off some big upsets if they can get them. But then they're going to be coming there at the end of the year against Virginia. 5-6 record last year and 8-5 the year before that. So not a great Virginia Tech team, a team that really hasn't shown that they've arrived yet, unlike the Virginia teams that actually have put up some pretty good records overall. Not a Virginia Tech team that, of course, going back, they had those outstanding top of the ACC teams. I mean, I remember, memorably, of course, Virginia Tech fans will remember Boise State 2010 going in and beat them, but then they turned around and won the ACC championship that year. So Virginia Tech, a team that has some history and some heritage and a chance to really kind of improve here under Justin Fuente, but I just don't think that that's going to be, this season is going to be quite as good as they have been in the past. I think they are probably going to be a middle-level ACC team there. So 7-5, 5-3 overall is what I'm predicting. So where does that leave us? How does that stack up for the ACC? Well, we're going to be looking at, so first I'm going to give you Athlon's prediction of the final, and I'm going to give mine, and then I'll say what we're looking at for the ACC championship game. So Athlon Sports' order finish for the Atlantic Division is predicting Clemson, North Carolina State, Boston College, Florida State, Louisville, Wake Forest, and then Syracuse. I'm going to disagree pretty severely with that. I think that Clemson's going to be number 1. I think North Carolina State is going to be number 2. The Atlantic Division is the weakest division in the ACC this year, so it's pretty much just kind of a shakeup for worse after that. But Tigers and the Wolfpack are going to be pretty good. After that, it's just kind of a tie for who's the worst. But number 3 overall, I think, is actually going to be Wake Forest. Number 4, Boston College. Number 5, Louisville. Number 6, Florida State. And number 7, of course, at the end, is Syracuse. Now, the Coastal Division, that's where the real talent lies in the ACC this year. So Athlon Sports is predicting North Carolina, Miami, Virginia, Pittsburgh, North Carolina, Miami, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Duke. I'm going to be saying just a little bit of shakeup here. North Carolina, Miami, Virginia Tech, because I think they are going to be having because they have a little bit of an easier schedule there than Virginia, even though I think Virginia is the better team on this schedule right here. But I just think that, Virginia... Oh, shoot, I put that in wrong. I was saying 6-2 Virginia, 5-3 for Virginia. Sorry. So I'm predicting, let me just backtrack on that. North Carolina, number 1. Miami Hurricanes, number 2. Virginia, number 3. Virginia Tech, number 4. Pittsburgh, number 5. Number 6, Duke. And then number 7, Georgia Tech there. So I think that, North Carolina, Miami, Virginia, even Virginia Tech can be pretty competitive there. But I think North Carolina is going to be the team. Even though North Carolina and Miami both going to be going 7-1, I think, North Carolina is going to own the win against Miami if everything works out the way I think it is. North Carolina is going to own the win against Miami there. And so I think it's going to be Clemson versus North Carolina, which is actually what Athlon Sports is predicting. We agree on that. I think it's going to be Clemson versus North Carolina. Now, Athlon Sports is predicting Clemson will win against North Carolina. Like I said, Mac Brown finally has his North Carolina team where he wants them. North Carolina returning an experienced starter. Clemson not returning an experienced starter. North Carolina returning a lot more starters for their team. North Carolina returning 16 starters, whereas Clemson, like we said, is only returning 15 starters. North Carolina, I just think, is going to be the better team, better coach team. I think in this case, I do have a ton of respect for Dabo Swinney, and I think that he is probably... I think Dabo Swinney is probably one of the best coaches out there, especially in the ACC, but I just think that Mac Brown here, much more experienced, much better quarterback. I think that North Carolina is going to get the win here. North Carolina over Clemson is my prediction there, with North Carolina winning the ACC. So that's my prediction overall. Video ran a little bit longer than I expected it to. Make sure you keep an eye out for the rest of my FBS conference previews, and make sure you keep an eye out. I'm going to be making a video for who I predict as the Final Four for the college football playoff team, and I'm also going to be looking at teams that I think are competitive for that overall before I give my prediction for the Final Four. So keep an eye out for that to see if I put any ACC teams in there, and just who I think is going to be there overall. Also, make sure you keep an eye out for my video for predicting the race for the New Year's Six, looking at the top group of 5 teams and who I think is going to be getting the best shot there for the New Year's Six. So thank you. If you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. As you can see, it's not all Boise State content. I do put out other videos relating to college football overall. But thank you for watching me today, and as always, go Big Blue.